I'm wearing black because in honor or in mourning of what's been going on in the last 2 weeks. I just want to ask, how many people have been following the Kavanaugh hearings? Okay, because it's been such a painful time for so many people, and I felt that it was really important to talk about it, especially because it affects women, but it affects all of us as Americans here, and it's definitely been very historic in every sense. We know this morning he was now officially confirmed as our next Supreme Court justice. The votes finally came in. And it's been a really difficult time for Americans. It's been a difficult time for women, for survivors of sexual assault, sexual abuse, sexual violation. And it's hard to, I've felt it viscerally, I've felt it emotionally. It's like, there's just this heaviness that I think all of us share. And as the Atlantic magazine put it, the guardrails have failed. So, there is no more checks and balances. The Supreme Court has lost its legitimacy. And it's clear that white patriarchy has really come into full force. So, the old men and old women who are, the 51 senators that took it upon themselves to make a decision that their partisan needs were more important than the needs of this country, is really a turning point for us. And so as an American, I feel very eviscerated, but I recognize that I have to deal with this as a Muslim and as a woman and as a convert. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about what that means. So my story of sharing today, I always pick a story to talk about. And this week, it was really nice. We were at the law school at UCLA Law, and I actually posted a video so people can kind of see this. But there was a walkout, a national walkout that was planned to protest Kavanaugh. So this was before the vote, obviously. So, and we were there on a day when the professor was teaching class, and it happened to coincide with when he was teaching class. So it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the faculty and students were told that people might walk out of their classes and congregate in the courtyard. And so we actually, the professor suspended his class and went with the students as they were, wearing black and gathering and sharing their stories. And it was like it was an opportunity where there was one megaphone and people could come up and just say what they wanted to say and grieve together. And it was really heartbreaking because every single person that came up started with, "I'm a survivor, I'm a survivor, I'm a survivor," and then would go on and share their story about what happened to them. And some of them, this was sometimes the first time that they actually said it out loud in public. There was, memorable among them was, a woman who said, she told her family, and it wasn't a big deal. To them, it wasn't that they didn't believe her. It's actually that they didn't think it was a big deal. And then she actually broke down in front of the audience. And then there was another woman who said that she came to law school because she had dreams of arguing cases in front of the Supreme Court. And now, knowing that Kavanaugh is going to be on that Supreme Court, she just that dream is gone. She couldn't see herself arguing anything in front of that man or that court. And now she just felt like a victim and didn't quite know what to do with herself. There were also 2 men that came up. One man was, 6 feet tall. He said that he was in a foreign country and he was violated. He went to the police station to report it, and they laughed at him. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. He didn't have his shoes. He had nowhere to go, and he was there on his own. And another man had never said it before. And this was in front of their classmates, so he was saying, "I've never told my family. I've never told my friends." And, and he was angry because, there was an email that had come out from the law school basically telling people to set aside their anger. And he was just expressing anger and saying, you have a right to express your anger and not shut up. And really was encouraging people to do that. The thing that was shocking is if you haven't heard the statistic, it's 1 in 3, some people say 1 in 2 women are victims of some form of sexual violation, either have been or will be in their lifetime. and 1 in 6 men. And we know that these crimes largely do not go unreported. So to me, that says to me, actually, the majority of women have been victims of some form of sexual violence or violation. So that's the majority. So let's take a moment to think about that. I mean, think about the women in your lives, the ones that you love, the most vulnerable, whether it's your daughter, your mother, your sister, your cousin, your nieces, your best friend. Of all those women you know, by that statistic, half of them will have already or will at some point in their life be victims of sexual violation. This is unbelievable and unacceptable. And, part of what we need to do is call it out. People are really uncomfortable coming forward, obviously. I mean, and what happened with, Christina Blasey Ford, very bravely sharing her story. I mean, I was riveted to that testimony. I watched every moment of it. And then I watched every moment of that horrific, premeditated, arrogant, belligerent, there are just no words for the testimony that Kavanaugh gave. And, you just can't help but think, what is the message that we're sending to our daughters and our women? That if this happens to you, you basically should just shut up and accept it. And I can't accept that. That is simply wrong. So, as a woman, even the speed with which everything was rammed through, whether it's, the vote has to happen now, the, investigation, which we know is a bit of a sham, and, it was on a limited timeline, and then we had to vote, all of that, as someone wrote, feels like the culture of rape. And it absolutely does. And at another level, it feels like a gender war, because this is really targeted towards women. So, what do we do? I mean, as a convert, let me back up. So listening to these stories, I mean, I was very proud that the professor got up and spoke, because honestly, he was probably the only faculty member standing out there. He was definitely the only faculty member who suspended his class. He was the only faculty member that spoke, and it meant a lot to the people that were out there. And, and I videotaped it, and you can't really quite hear it, but he basically came out and said, I have seen these cases, because he was the chair of the Student Conduct Committee at UCLA for a decade, and he used to adjudicate these cases of rape and students raping other students, and this would happen every single weekend. Every single party, every single social function, there would be women who were assaulted and raped. So he felt, very strongly that he needed to come out and say, I believe you, and I support you. And, and that meant so much. I wish that more people had done that. So what I wanted to share is, I mean, as a Muslim convert, I think especially, I chose this faith, and I sacrificed to be part of this faith. And part of what pulled me to this religion was not the message that you hear at the mosque, not about, how Islam is easy, black and white, it's about haram and halal, and, you should be watching where your scarf is, and if your hair falls out of your scarf, or, whatever it is. I came because I believed in the Islam of love and mercy and compassion and being with the oppressed and justice. This is what we have to remember as Muslims. And we know that God is with the poor, the ill, the oppressed. And if he's there, I know God is also with those who are sexually assaulted. And we have to be at the forefront of, talking about these issues. They're not talked about at the mosque, obviously. This is not something that people want to touch. And there's no shame in it. I want to tell people, victims of sexual assault, there's no shame, because it wasn't your fault. And I actually, I struggled with this next part, because I am a survivor, too. And I didn't know whether I wanted to say that or not, but I decided that, I really need to say it, because this is the time when we need to come together. When the highest levels of justice have been literally decimated, when we can't look to the Supreme Court, and we have to look to one another, to really make justice come alive, we have to stand up and we have to be counted. We have to say, this is the reality of this problem. And we as Muslims can be part of the solution. So, for me, when my story happened when I was a child, so I was much younger than Christina Blasey Ford. She was 15. So I think that, these experiences, they murdered my soul. And they murder the souls of every woman who has to be in a situation where they are forced to experience something that will traumatically change their lives for the rest of their lives. But what I want to say is that, I'm so grateful. I mean, I think part of that experience from the time of being a child and seeing so much ugliness and not really quite knowing how to process it, part of what it makes you feel is a desire for beauty and a desire for meaning. Because you've seen such ugliness, you're looking for, what is the solution? What is the answer? Isn't there something more? And I do believe that that was instrumental in opening my heart towards finding Islam, but the Islam of beauty and the Islam of love. And I, now it's like been decades, of course. I mean, I became a Muslim at 25, as I've said before, and I actually did not become aware of the sexual violation until several years after that. So I was an adult and trying to deal with that. And I was very fortunate that, Dr. Abul Fadl, we were married, and he believed me. And he loved me enough to support me and do everything possible to help me heal. So number one, instrumental to that was the Islam of love. And instrumental to that healing was recognizing that God wants you to be a beautiful, divine person. And I want to tell people, you can heal from this experience. There is, most people don't even know this, but there is an Usuli method that people can heal from. And, I can say that it's very similar to the Alcoholics Anonymous 12-step program. So it's not anything that's unfamiliar to people. It has a lot to do with being very open and honest and confronting things and trusting in God and trusting in beauty and all of that. So, I want to tell people, survivors, that there is healing. I mean, when I was watching these people talk at the law school, I desperately wanted to say something, but there was no place there for me to talk about faith or Islam or God. So I wanted to say it here. And, there were women who were saying, I feel like a victim and I don't know what to do. So I want to say that, for us as Muslims, we know that so much of that healing, it's a long, long process. It's kind of like when they say the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I think the arc of healing is long, and it bends towards beauty, and it bends towards, this beautiful idea of what Islam can be. And I would not, now I can say, decades later, I would not change any of what happened because it brought me to where I am today, and I'm so grateful that, I was able to overcome a lot of what comes with that experience. And it's truly because of, God and faith, and you have to be patient, you have to do a lot of hard work, you have to get help, you have to have a support system. There are a lot of ways, and you should not feel ashamed. Muslims have to start dealing with this issue. They have to start, making it something that we can talk about and tackle. They don't like to talk about addiction. They don't like to talk about abuse. They don't like to talk about, whatever the social problems are that we have. And how can we not be Muslims, and our whole faith is about uplifting those that are suffering. And, I just out of curiosity, I was thinking to myself, I'm really curious what, if mosques this week at their khutbahs were talking about the Kavanaugh issue, because this is a huge issue. And disappointingly, the local mosque, and I don't, really want to name it, but, I played their khutbah, waiting and hoping to hear the word Kavanaugh, and nothing. It was just another typical young, fiery guy telling Muslims, chewing them out about how to be nice to one another. Which is just like, okay, we have to be relevant, we have to be real, we have to stand up for truth, we have to stand up for justice. We witnessed before our eyes the ugliness of this whole process. So ugly, if I make the analogy of, this to sexual assault. It is so ugly that the only thing we have left is to look for beauty. How do we make that beauty happen? How do we become active in that? And we have to start by demanding more. I mean, I know a lot of young people watch these halakas, and I'm so angry from seeing what the khutbah talked about that I am like, you know what, mosque leaders, if you can't handle these issues, then step aside, get out of the way. This is not, mosques are not where you can enjoy the power of being able to lecture people for your own ego. Mosques we have to reclaim these spaces as spaces where people in need and people who are suffering and people who need help can go and feel like they can get help. Whether you have problems with abuse or harassment or addiction or whatever problem it is that is affecting our youth as part of this country, we need to demand that these mosques, and take them back. They need to be relevant and they need to help our people, and they need to start being an example for humanity, not just for Muslims. So if you old people, closed-minded, maybe young people are closed-minded too. If you can't handle the reality of our world, get out of the way, because there are people here who can and are ready, and we need it. Because if we don't, the country is on a path to go downhill, and we've got to fight like hell to reclaim that. But as Muslims, we can be a solution for humanity. Everyone's searching for beauty. Everyone's searching for meaning. We have it in our tradition. We just don't know it. So again, and I would say, the mosques should be encouraging everyone to come out and vote and get these people out of office. I didn't hear a word vote. I didn't hear a word Kavanaugh. I didn't hear a word women, sexual abuse, anything like that. So it's time. This is how we heal and how we uplift our nation. That's why we're Muslim. And if you can't do that, if you were not appalled by what you saw, if you didn't feel the injustice of this as a Muslim, then I would say you need to check why you're Muslim. Because I've sacrificed to stay in this religion. And if you're not willing to sacrifice some skin for making this world a better place, then fine, leave. We don't need you. We need people who are ready to fight and who are ready to uphold the virtues, the active virtues of our faith, and be examples for humanity, not just for other Muslims, and not people who are just feeding their egos. So, thank you. Can I say one more thing? Sorry. I forgot to say this too. We hear that that Muslim women who are married somehow have been told, some women have been told that that means that their husband owns their bodies and has a right to their bodies. And I'm telling you that that's not true. It's your body, it's your right. There's, you don't marry off and then with that comes the ownership of your body. Thank you.
Greece has become a hard act to follow.
So that's quite brilliant, Grace.
I'm angry.
I think
Powerful.